Hello everybody, this is going to be another video on my channel where I discuss a lot of mechanical topics that could be outside of the locksmith field, but this one happens to be in the locksmith field, small interchangeable cores, small format interchangeable cores. And I like to share this information with you because when I was a locksmith, before I learned about A3, I really didn't have a whole lot of knowledge to really talk much about it. And so I'd like to share that with you. That way you understand more about the system. So I'm going to be referencing the service manual by Schlage and Ellison just to assist me in making my examples and showing you the different systems. So typically, with these small format interchangeable cores, you see them like this, these best cores. Typically, most of the time, you're gonna see them in an A2 system. An A2 system is just going to be the increments of intervals between your pins. The distance between the next one, how they're subdivided, is going to be based on a set increment. Two-step progression for the A2, meaning you have an odd even pattern whenever you're looking at your theory. That's most of the system is A2. You're going to see an A3, which is what we're going to be discussing today. And you can also see an A4. So the area which I live in, a pretty large metroplex, we have A3 all over the place. Two of the institutions that I worked at here have them. If you look on eBay, you can find cores. Traditionally, you'll find 6-pin cores on eBay, and a lot of times they will be cut and pinned to A3 system. So that's the introduction. The A3 is just a pinning segment. So the first and the last, hopefully I could do this right so that it's understood. The bottom pin 0 is going to be the same for all of these systems because a key blank will operate the operating shear line on a 0. And the lowest cut is a 6, which is equivalent to a 9. So the deepest cut and the shallow cut are the same on all of these. The difference is how they're divided between each pin. We have some problems with A3, very, very big problems. But first, I want to talk about how it's used. In my experience, I've seen these A3 systems used for 2 reasons. One of them is a budget reason. You may have a limited budget with a school district, small institution. And in the mid-70s, when these were very popular, I would say about 1970 to 1978, extremely popular. Well, during that time, if you're a small school district or a small institution, for budget savings reasons, they would give you a 6-pin core rather than a 7-pin because they're cheaper, and also the cylinders may be cheaper as well. In this day and age, there's really not much of a price difference on the two. So at the time, there was a cost savings to having a 6-pin. So if you have a 6-pin system, you can use an A3. There's an advantage of using A3. You get a lot more combinations, so you can have a medium to large size school district, 1 grandmaster key for all the buildings, all the facilities. You can't do that with an A2. So budget reason. The other reason that I've seen is you have such a giant campus, such a large campus, that you really need 1 master key to get very far, to open as many doors as possible without having to add extra key groups. So let's talk a little bit about that. With an A2 system, you can get 16,384 combinations. Those are key biddings for change keys. That's quite a bit. Now, if you have a multi-mill key system up to 4 keyways, you multiply that by 4. And that's your maximum potential. The A3 has over 250,000 possible combinations. proved unreliable before 1978, abandoned. And the A4 system introduced in 1978, but it's also not very reliable. We'll talk about that. You still see A4, and you can actually get the best factory to give you A4. There's a very specific reason for that. The reason why is because if you use keyways that only have one keyway, non-multi-mill, you're gridlocked to one system like this. So 78,000 versus multi-mill. Multi-mill, you can multiply these by however many keyways. Biggest problem, so back to what I was saying. So large campuses want that key to go as far as they can. I used to work at Texas Tech University, and if I was the lock shop manager in the early stages of their key system, I would have insisted that we use best cores, 7-pin, multi-mill, JKLM, A3 system. I would have insisted, because that would have reduced the amount of keys needed to operate the campus. Too many keys can cause safety issues. And in this day and age, that's a huge deal. So I don't recommend anybody really use the A3. I would only use this pinning kit to service the existing systems. So here it does say in this service manual that it was abandoned before 1978. The reason why, in my experience, these number 1 top pins, these master pins number 1, they are so thin. Even the number 2s are extremely thin. And what happens is one day that number 1 pin needs to be sitting down like this in the pin stack. But one day it'll flop over, and in the pin stack it'll go sideways. You try to stick your key in and it won't go in all the way. Usually it happens with some of the back pins. So even the number 2s I've seen do that as well. Even though this number 2 is smaller than a number 2, or I think it's larger than a number 2 in an A2. But I've seen those flop on their side. You try to stick the key in and it won't go in all the way. And if you're using any of these brass pins, try to grab one for you. I hate these springs. If you're using any of these brass springs, you're gonna have lots of problems, because these brass springs made by Lab and made by other companies are not very reliable. These brass springs. Really what you want is original Dormakaba springs. Those are a lot more reliable. You may not collapse on you the same way that those will. So once that happens, in my experience, where you try to stick the key in, it doesn't go in all the way. Sometimes that'll ruin the spring and it needs to be repinned. Not always. Sometimes you can squirt some lubricant in the cylinder, hit it with the back of a screwdriver, that way hit the core without damaging it. That might jolt it back into shape. Or you can take a lock pick and wobble around in there. You might be able to move that pin. That's the problem. Another issue that I've seen, it's not really too much of an issue, but your single step progression can be an issue later on. Some of you will know this, that your master keying, if you have a single step progression, your odd even sequence does not no longer applies. That's an issue for me with some of my systems. I can get into that in another video on master keying. I wanted to show you this bar that I use for my key machine. This is an A2. So these stamped numbers represent an A2 system. So I move this bar. That's how I cut the keys. But what I did in Sharpie, red Sharpie, is I wrote down where each A3 cut is. And this actually works really good. 0 and 0 match on the A2. Number 3 matches the 2 on A3. On the A2, the 6 matches the 4, and the 9 matches the 6. The 1 is in between 1 and 2. The 3 is in between 4 and 5, and the 5 is in between 7 and 8 on this bar. You can use that if you have your original combinator as well. The original best combinator. This is from the Blue Machine. I say that because if you try to get these premium, these are not premium, these are, well, still if you use premium or if you use peaks or preferred, you cannot get these pinned in A3. But if for whatever reason you need to cut A3 on those, or you want to pin A3, you can do something like this. Factory will not send you A3 pinned up in these newer cores. So they only do A4 for the exceptions. A2 is the standard. So that's all I really want to talk about now. I think that's everything that I had. I'd like to include another tip for you guys before I go. I'll just mention that it's 0 through 6 bottom pins. I believe top is 1 through 13, although I only go up to 10 on mine. And these are non-original. These are colored pins. That way, in case they spill. I don't use this pinning kit very often. But pro tip for you guys is whenever you have your pinning chart like this, I recommend that you guys, a lot of you already know this, but I would recommend that if you're questioning what pins you really need to keep in stock when you're doing your inventory, I recommend that you stock as extra of your driver pins, your top pins. I would make sure that I have plenty of those because those will always stay the same in systems where your control key is the same. So a little bit of a pro tip, hope that helps. I'm still learning a little bit from other people as time goes along. I mean, I have Frank Allison Best's biography and a lot of his notes. I studied some of his works. So that's all that I'm going to do for now. If you have any questions, please comment them. If you like this video, please like it, subscribe. I would like to get feedback so that I know this is a new channel. And I'd like to know if you guys would like to learn more about the A2, A4 multi-section keyways, which I don't know if I have an actual keyway chart. Yes, I do. But I do have keyway charts that one day I would like to go over. Some proprietary information that I have that you can't get in service manuals, that you can't get on YouTube videos yet. So like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you next time.